I mean, it was weird. It was just like very, I don't know, I didn't really think about it. But long story short, I did answer and I ended up getting in contact with her. And so she's a handful. So I asked her questions I always wanted to ask. And every answer was it wasn't her fault. She was a victim. My dad would beat her so bad that she'd be in the hospital, and she didn't want me around that, and she feared for our safety, and that's when she had the courage to leave and all this stuff. And then
Is your brother in touch with her?
No, she left my brother. She gave up on my brother and said that's my father's child. She's like, I should have tried harder, but I didn't think I would win against your father. And then I'm like, she's like, she forgets like that I have a memory. I had visitation with my father. I would go see him every weekend. Like, if he beat you so bad that you fear for your life and you're a domestic violence victim, I don't think they would allow that to happen, right? Or am I missing something? Like,
How?
right. And then on top of all that, she never had visitation with my brother. It's a very weird setup, right? Right, I was living with my mother primarily, down the street in the apartments, on this highway, and down the street in a motel. My brother lived with my dad for years. And guess what? My mother never went over there to see her son, her firstborn. I'm telling you, my family, it's like it's like, what? How do you live literally within walking distance? You never go see your son. But it was normal. It was normal for us. But Lori would come over to see her dad, who lives in a motel room. How did DHS, the Department of Human Services in Oklahoma City, think that that was an appropriate setup? I'm confused. A grown man, two grown men, a little girl living in a one bed, which is enough space for one person, maybe two, full time. We slept on the floor in blankets, like pallets we called them. Literally the space I had was a shelf set up in the corner.
And you were going to school?
Yes.
Do you remember the name of the motel?
Oh God, they changed it so much. Like, so many owners have had that, but I know that there was a Ramada Inn, or have you heard of Ramada? Yeah, Ramada's a famous, yeah. A Ramada was like there for most of the time.
What year were you in school?
This is from when the summer I turned 10 to the summer I turned 15 when I started running away.
So you were living with her for 5 years?
No, my dad for 5 years.
With him.
Mm-hmm. Yep. My mother had her rights terminated because she was caught at my school with methamphetamine on her.
Yeah.
And she was high. So she didn't show up to I remember her on the phone. Ain't nobody gonna supervise me with my child. And we waited. We had to wait an hour before we could leave. And every time we left, my father, like, I told you. And so she got her rights terminated. The judge was like, oh, okay, you want to show up? Then you must not care, okay. So that was that. I didn't hear from her. She had no legal to contact me.
What kind of drug she was on?
I mean, she smoked weed. She smoked menthol cigarettes. I know she did meth.
Did she have a job, or was she on some kind of...
No, my mother was, so, I guess her divorce lawyer, the man that divorced my mother and father, ironically, his last name is the same as mine. I guess they had this thing. He was married and had a son, but, he secretly financially supported my mother, and most definitely they were having an affair. And my mother had a lot of boyfriends, and she always found a way to support herself. My mother had jobs. She did have jobs. She was like the manager at McDonald's, and then she'd be like the manager at the local buffet. Whatever she could get. And then but she was always switching jobs, and we were always moving to different apartments. And then like the guy who would get us houses, we ended up moving into like 2 or 3 different houses, like nice houses. And then I was actually living in one of those houses in a very nice neighborhood when I got put with my dad. And so yeah, my mother was very...
Did you have jobs then when you were a teenager in school?
No, I didn't get to, because I was in foster care and I was angry. So I ran away, and I got into trouble on purpose. And yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, I ended up staying in the 8th grade for 3 years. when I got put in foster care, every new school I got put into 8th grade. So I was like kind of like really starting over. Like it was a mess. I don't know. So then I got put in a group home the last 9 months. Well, I was there for almost a year, and that was called a lockdown group home, which means that for girls that are bad, you leave their placements and no one can keep them in one spot. So I was in some weird like schoolhouse setup they had on campus because we were like in the middle of nowhere, and they were giving us like 3rd grade work. It was just like, and then the group home after that, which is the one that I ended up leaving, to, in the adult world. I was in this like program to get my GED, but I was not trying to get my GED. I didn't care about that. But I got that on my own at Job Corps. At Job Corps in LA.
And the reason we asked that last question was before you were talking about your dad making your paychecks.
Paychecks? Oh yeah, because that was when I was 17, and I was in that group home. It's called an independent living group home for girls that are older and aging out. And
where was that?
Where was that?
Yeah.
Oklahoma City? The northern side, which is the nicer side. In a house, a very nice big house. And so then I was staying there, and then I was working at Taco Bell in the mall on the north side. My father lived in a motel on the south side. And so when I mean, I don't want to say I regret it, but I feel weird saying this, but I guess at that age or point in my life, like, I like played with these people, the staff members. I played with them because it was so easy to play with them, right? So they, so I was to go see. We had to go to therapy, right? And I told the therapist that I would just had a little bit of trouble with sleeping, and I kind of felt sad. But I mean, like, I was in a group home. Like, I feel like I had a reasonable amount of sadness. He put me on a strong sleep aid antidepressant. It was bad. Like, I was hallucinating. I was paranoid. There was black shadows. And they said, no, you've only been taking it. It's not enough. You need to give it away to get in your system. And I'm like, I'm hallucinating. I woke up, put my jeans on, laid back down. Woke up, put my shirt on, laid back down. That's how tired I was. And I went to school that way until I passed out in my chair, and they sent me home. Trazodone, 80 milligrams for someone who's never taken a sleep aid. And then what happened was I freaked out, and I was hiding under this table by the door. I freaked out, and they sent me to the youth mental ward. I spent 2 weeks trying to convince these people that it wasn't crazy, it was just the drugs. So after 2 weeks of me being, because they didn't want to take me off the drugs. So after 2 weeks, they're like, okay, it wasn't her, it was the drugs. So finally, I got through that. And then I was like, I just feel like playing with these people because they put me through that. And they had me see this like therapist or whatever. And he was like testing my intelligence level. And I was just messing with him, but from his professional opinion, I had mild mental retardation. He diagnosed me with that. I was just fucking with him because what? And then it was serious though. It was on my medical records, and the staff were telling me that I could collect a disability check and be set for my life. And they said, okay, they found an adult living group home for mentally handicapped people in a city I never heard of. And they had the paperwork drawn up to send me there. And I was like, oh my God, this one's way too far. They believed what he said. I was like, yeah. So faced with that, I ran away to keep my job at Taco Bell. And I convinced myself that I was wrong when I ran away from my dad, that, I convinced myself it was my fault. Because I guess being with him and my brother is better than a retard home in, I don't know, whatever city. And then, so long story short, I ended up running away. So technically I was a runaway when I aged out of the system. If I had not ran away, I could have collected certain benefits, but I'm a 17-year-old, I don't know. I could have been, whatever, it could have been a difference, but.
How did you get from there to here?
So I was staying with my dad, and he was taking my Taco Bell checks, and then he was taking my brother's check, and then his check. So he had 3 checks income. We were still living in a motel. There was a week that I ran away, right? It took a week for me to get my possessions from my caseworker. He never bought me clothing. He never bought me shampoo. I sat in my own filth for a week because he didn't care until I got my stuff. Yeah, I'm serious. The same pair of jeans and shirt. And then I remember he didn't trust me to be alone at the motel in the air conditioner watching TV. He didn't trust me. So he would drop me off at the public library. So I stayed there for 8 hours a day. And then he'd pick me up after work. So this one day in particular, and would always meet him out front of the library, right? Always. He gave me a cell phone to communicate with, and this one day I'm like waiting. It's been 30 minutes. I know his truck. It's a blue Chevy, and he's not there. And I call my dad. Where are you? I'm out front. He's like, no, you weren't out front. So I was out front. He's like, I told you meet me at a 7-Eleven, and I waited for you. And you weren't there. 7-Eleven? What? We never meet in front of 7-Eleven. And I'm serious. This is heartbreaking, but I'm like, I guess I don't know. I guess it doesn't affect me like it used to. I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm on my way down to 7-Eleven right now. He's like, no, me and my brother are at home, and he's cooking dinner. I just get out of the shower. So he said to me on the phone, right? And I'm 17, and I'm like, I start to cry. I'm like, because in my mind, in my 17-year-old mind, I'm like, is he serious? So I'm sitting in front of 7-Eleven, and I have I don't know why, I have a picture of myself crying in front of that 7-Eleven in my email. But it might take me a minute to find it, so I'm not gonna try. But I do have it, and maybe one day I'll find it and I'll show you. But I have evidence that I was in front of that 7-Eleven crying my eyes out, because he told me to go under the bridge, because there was this, because the I-240, and you know the cars have to go under the traffic. He told me to go sleep under the underpass. He told me that. A 17-year-old girl, he told me that. And I was crying. I cried so hard that the tears weren't even coming out anymore. And I kept calling him, and then I would hang up and be like, okay, fine, I'll never talk to you again, you can have your phone back. And then I would call him, and it was just like, wow. Like, and then he finally came and got me, but he treated me like I'd done something so horrible. And I remember when we got back, he really cooked dinner. He gave me a bowl. Crazy, right? So one day, I guess, I don't know, I was just thinking, and I added up how much money I'd given him. Over $2,000, and to a 17-year-old, especially since I hated my job, that was a lot. And then I was like, I started looking around. I don't know why. In this one moment, I realized that I wasn't wrong. I ran away for good reason, to not end up being a paycheck to him. Because look, where I'm at, we're in another motel. I don't have my own bed. I sleep on the floor still. And I'm working, giving you money. I don't see any of that money. I don't get an allowance. I don't get new clothes. I don't get shit. And it just like hit me, and I was like, everything I was trying to avoid is happening.
What was he doing with all that money?
An Xbox, a PlayStation 4, a GameCube, a drawer full of nice fancy hunting knives that he's never gonna fucking go hunting with, a drawer full of fancy flashlights, NASCAR memorabilia, just a giant desktop computer, whatever he wanted, basically. It was all about him and his comfort. It was. So then I was like, you know, it just hit me like, this is what I was trying to avoid. Now me and my brother were never super close up until that point. So one day, right, my dad told us to wake him up from a nap. He wants us to be silent for 3 hours, like we're servants, like we have to wake him up from a nap. And we're in a motel, like a one-room motel. So what are we supposed to do but sit there and twiddle our thumbs, right? Like it was just like, so we went into the bathroom and we were listening to music together and we were talking, and we just had this fascinating connection. Like we connected. We were like, wow, we have so much in common. And we were listening to music and we were laughing, and we forgot to wake him up, and he overslept, and he was fucking furious. But from that moment on, it didn't matter, because we had came up with the plan to fucking leave. And then his friend had I guess bought this house, like a duplex, you know, and duplexes in Oklahoma are next to each other, so it's like a house split in half. And so when I came to New York, I was like, duplexes are on top of each other? Oh, they're not called duplexes, they're 2-family homes. Okay, and I was like, okay, cool. But anyway, so I call them duplexes. People in here are like, what's a duplex? And I'm like, never mind. Okay, so, and it was like a neighborhood, so me and my brother shared a room. We're actually adults sharing a room. I don't know, it was just, oh my God. Anyway, so we started plotting this plan. And I remember we had a computer in that room, and we were trying to find a location, right? I don't know why we thought Los Angeles would be a great place. It's like the worst place for runaways to go. So we had set our eyes on Los Angeles, right? So I remember we had to steal our social security cards and our birth certificate. My brother, he crawled at night when my dad was asleep into his room, got into his briefcase, and we knew where we kept it. And I was like the lookout. I'm serious, that was our existence. And long story short, so we went to LA, we were homeless, blah, blah, blah. For 2 years, we came back separate, we argued. And that's when I was like, I tried to make up my brother, but he'd already like given up on and just went back on my dad to his job and his routine and the comforts he had known. So I saw my mom, she's crazy. So I said, you know, forget Oklahoma, I'm done. Forget everybody, I'm gonna start over. So I had this little dollar store job, and when I got $200, which was what I needed, I bought a Greyhound ticket to New York. I didn't know anybody in New York. I found this woman on Craigslist in Manhattan Beach that needed a live-in housekeeper. I didn't know that was like her thing, to take in runaways. I didn't know.